So I've been contacted earlier on today to speak to a resident who's got problems with some housing benefit paperwork. That's kind of typical with the kind of casework I'm getting, and because of the background I've got, it's fairly easy for me to deal with. So this is a typical kind of thing that I'm going to deal with on a day-to-day basis with all types of residents' casework. So we're off to meet Thomas now, who's contacted me in the past, and I have sorted things out for him in the past, so hopefully we'll get things done for him again today.
Hi Thomas, thanks for speaking to us today. So tell us, how do you know Amo?
I was having trouble with the housing people, and my sister put me in touch with him because I had to give my property up because I moved in with my girlfriend at the time, and then we found out that she'd got cancer, and we was planning to get married at a later date, but we had to bring everything forward, but she passed away.
I'm sorry.
So, and then they said I couldn't keep the house on, and that's why Amo got things rolling, and I got the tenancy of the property. But at first they were saying I couldn't have the tenancy with it being a 3-bedroom house and me being single.
Right.
And they stopped paying the rent, then they stopped it again. And now it's sorted out.
Good.
So they're not paying the full rent. I have to pay top up on what they're paying and stuff like that. So.
Well, I'm glad you managed to get something sorted in the end. What was your view of politicians in the past?
I hadn't really had nothing to do with them.
And what's been your experience of meeting Amo as a politician? Was he how you thought he would be?
Well, my sister said he'd done quite a lot for her. I said, well, you best get in touch, see what he can do for me. And same as I say, he got me the tenancy and everything. I thought, well, if I need him again for anything, I'm going to get in touch with him.
So you got that. It's helpful to have a contact you know will do something, isn't it, and act on things. So how would you describe him? What's he like?
He's all right. He seems a good guy. So, but according to one or two people around here have been in touch with him, and they said that he's done quite a lot for them as well.
Oh, that's good to hear. It's good to hear because we don't always hear good news about politicians, so it's nice to hear some happy stories about good things and good outcomes. So thank you for talking to us today. We're now out and about with Amo in his role as a councillor. So Amo, tell us, how did it all start for you getting into politics?
It's not something I planned. It's not something, if you asked me 7-8 years ago would I be doing this, I've always tried to stay politically neutral simply because of my job, but sometimes when you see a lot of injustice happen around you, something inside you sparks a desire to want to be part of something that will change things. One of the things I've been really clear about is I think that disabled people need to be in positions where they can influence part of a decision-making process. And a lot of my work in the last 25 years has been with the local authority. And sometimes you can get frustrated at the local authority saying, well, you're not doing this for disabled people, or you're not doing that. And I thought, well, what's the best way of doing this? And I thought, well, okay. And one of the existing councillors, said, look, why don't you get involved with the Labour Party? And I felt I looked around and thought, well, that's the party I've got more resonance with in terms of its values around disability and social justice, etc. So that's why I joined them. I stood for election in 2014 and I lost. I lost, and I don't like losing.
I was going to say, how did you feel about that?
I really didn't like losing, and it fired something up again inside me, which thought, right, this time I'm going to put a lot more effort into it. And I worked really hard. I got to know the ward of Blaygreaves a lot better. I understood the people, the demographics of the people, the needs, the gaps in the area, and I realised what was needed. And one of the things that I honed in on straight away was the traffic problems in the area, and the lack of action by the existing councillors in the area about a traffic system. And so I campaigned for a traffic light system at the Blaygreaves Lanes Stenson Road junction, and immediately it resonated with everybody. People who drove in the area said, just what we need. People who lived in the area saying we're desperate for a solution there. So I had a word with the leadership, and before we realised it, we found some additional funds on top of Section 106 money, and he actioned it. And honest to God, to this day, it's been over a year since that junction's been running. People are still raving on about it, about how successful it has, how much the traffic is flowing much more smoother in the area. So that again showed me that I'm making a difference, and councillors can get things done. Politicians get a rough ride sometimes, and I don't know whether it's down to whether they can do things or not. But for me, it's about talking to the right people, and a desire to make change. So that's one of the reasons I'm in politics. I just like to make change positive. If I'm thinking I'm not making change, then I won't stand again. But I really do feel that I'm making a difference locally.
For people who maybe haven't had the experience of being a councillor, what kind of typical jobs that you do in your role?
So we do a lot of casework. People will ring up and say, I'm struggling with my council tax benefit, or as in the case of Thomas, who we just spoke to earlier, he was about to be made homeless, and it's knowing who to ring and what action to take. That's the kind of thing that I get involved in, and so some of the times it's just picking up the phone and saying, right, can you do, within Thomas' case, I made a few phone calls, spoke quite sternly to the Housing Association and said, I was in Prague at the time on holiday when they rang me, and all it took was a couple of phone calls while I was in Prague, and I put a halt to that eviction notice that he'd been served, and it's just things like that where you can make a difference to someone's life. So that's your typical kind of thing where you get involved in, sometimes you get involved in things that are outside your area of expertise, but that's not a problem, because there is always an agency we can bring in or refer to if needed. If it's a housing problem with a tenancy, I just bring in Derby Homes, and if it's something, a debt advice, I'll get in touch with Citizens Advice. There's plenty of groups out there, and sometimes the people don't know that themselves, so that's why the first point of call is someone like myself.
And how do you learn how to be a councillor? What skills are needed, or what training is available?
Well, I mean, I'd say to anybody who wants to get into this kind of role, I wouldn't just be a politician because you think you're going to make... You've got to know your community, you've got to know your surroundings and your environment. It's about knowing what people are going through, and resonating with that. Maybe you've got personal experience of some of the issues that your residents are going to go through, or maybe you know of agencies who have worked in the past with certain groups. It's about amalgamating all that experience and then saying to the individual, this is what we think you can, the organisation you can use. And so a lot of it, there is no real training, if I'm entirely honest with you, on how to be a councillor. It's about understanding people's daily struggles.
Okay, so what's the best thing about being a councillor, and what's the worst thing about being a councillor?
The best thing about being a councillor is when you've got a job done, whether it's a big thing like sorting out a junction and improving the traffic flow in an area, or whether it's a small thing about sorting somebody's benefits out or just getting a pothole filled. That's the great sense of achievement you get, whether it's a big issue you've solved or a small one. The worst thing, I hate politics. I hate the political silliness that goes on. I'm not interested. And whether it's at a local level or whether you see it on the TV on a national level, it doesn't excite me. I hate it. I don't want to be associated with it. I steer clear of it. I'm the least politically kind of active person you can get. I don't get involved in silliness. I just want to get a job done. And sometimes that can, people try and press my buttons to try and see that's what we can do, right. And I don't react. I just don't. There are occasions there. Recently the opposition councillor felt the need to say that I use my disability to my advantage, and that's where I thought that's the final straw. So and then I will react, but apart from that, I don't react. I don't get involved in any of the silliness that goes on. I walk away from it. Unfortunately, in politics, it brings out the worst of people sometimes, and whether it's opposition politicians or whether it's their supporters, they have been not so nice to me, shall we say, and I expect it. So I've learned to take it on the chin. It upsets those who love me. My staff get upset sometimes when they see that I'm being targeted. My family get upset. My friends get upset. They've all said to me one by one, "Is it worth it, Amo? Why are you doing this?" And then I remember people like Thomas who I've supported, and I say, "Well, yeah, it's worth it." Yeah. That's what it's about.
I think a lot of the things you describe are very off-putting to a lot of people to get into politics. That party politics, the divisive politics, the game playing that you describe. But what words of advice would you give to other people who, like you, want to get into it to make a difference? Yeah. What words of advice would you give to them to move in that direction?
I'd say really have a strong conversation with yourself as to why you're doing this. What is it you're trying to achieve? If it's just to boost if you're trying to make a career out of it, then the public aren't daft, they read into that. But if you truly want to make a difference, then understand your neighbourhood, understand the people, go and talk to some advice agencies in the city. They will tell you what people are going through on a day-to-day basis, and you will see that will become your casework in whichever ward you decide to stand in. I'm not going to make this a party political broadcast for the Labour Party. If people want to go and join opposition parties, that's fine, but really do understand what you're trying to achieve here. If you're trying to make a difference to your community, then stand for politics, in politics, but do not do it for personal gain, because I'll be honest with you, there is no personal gain in this. You will give up a portion of your life. Most evenings and weekends I'm out and about, and it has an effect on you, especially in cold days like this where the wind creaks right into your bones, so you will feel it. But again, it's worth it as long as you're happy with what you're doing, and as long as the residents are happy with what you're doing. Keep at it. Go and speak to existing politicians and ask them to be honest about what they get up to, and if it does excite you, then do it. I did. I spoke to Labour Party politicians. I spoke to Conservative politicians before I went and joined decided to stand. I wanted to know what goes on. That's just me, though.
It's good advice as we want to consider doing that next step. And you particularly mentioned earlier you'd like to see more disabled people represented in decision making and leadership positions. What words of encouragement would you like to give to disabled people to come forward, to be visible and vocal in politics?
I would say definitely do it. I would say go and speak to. There are other disabled people in the political arena. I would say go and talk to them. Try and ask them to mentor you if needed, and I would be happy to mentor people to get into to this line of work, because, as I say, disabled people making a difference at every level, and when you're a local councillor, you're making a decision at the highest level in your city, or your town or your village or whatever. You're making a difference, and you're part of that decision making process, so your views will be valuable. So I would say definitely do it. There are even now funding available to help disabled people to get into this kind of community work, into politics. So, you know, those kind of the systems are there to support you. So by all means, do it.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.